now to the introduction of our guest speaker. So this evening, we are very, very fortunate to have our guest speaker, Sheriff Orvis Campbell. I think many of you are very familiar with him because he is out and about in our county. He spends a lot of time working and just enjoying our community. He's a lifelong resident of Tuscarawas County. He started his public service in 1990 when he was a probation officer, and he has moved up through the ranks, and he was elected sheriff in 2016. Now, he is an instructor at the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy, as well as a graduate of the FBI National Academy. He is currently a board member of the Anti-Drug Coalition, the United Way, and Noah's Hope Child Advocacy Center. But of course, in the past, he has been on many boards because he's really concerned and very dedicated to making our community the best and safest place that it can be. So he's been on the board for Harbor House, for the Domestic Violence Shelter, the Substance Abuse Halfway House, Personal and Family Counseling, and the Adams Board. And actually, one of his highlights is that he was a storyteller at Storytime for the Dover Public Library. So you can see that Sheriff Campbell is a person who is dedicated to our community in many, many ways. In 2008, in fact, the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association nominated and elected him as Ohio's Outstanding Law Enforcement Officer. So without further ado, we are in great hands tonight, the hands of an expert who is going to tell us how to be on the lookout for scams and frauds. So Sheriff Orvis Campbell, it is your program. You may continue from here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. So before we got started, we had just a couple little computer issues, and my computer says I have full. We start to hear any audio issues, please just kind of hold your hand up, and that'll kind of be a signal to me that you're not hearing me correctly, and that'll give me a chance to pause and back up. So tonight we're gonna talk about frauds and scams. It's not exactly the most exciting topic, but boy, is it an important one. It's a topic that it comes to play almost every single day here in Tuscarawas County. We have people who get a lot of their hard-earned money taken from them. And there's a few basic principles that you can understand about how these individuals work, these scammers work, that could really protect you. And that's what we're going to try to talk about today. So the first thing you need to understand is that these scammers are using any information that they've already got about you to develop a scam. It's not really the other way around. So you're always hearing about identity theft, about websites getting hacked and things like that. And they get that information that is sold on the dark web or however it's done. And they get whatever information they can about you. And with the information that they have, that's when they sit down and go, okay, with this information, what kind of a scam or number of scams can I design with the information I have here? Many of these scams are done over the telephone. We're going to talk about that. They come via email or in writing, but many of them come over the telephone, and they're so effective because these individuals practice all day long, and they are the most convincing individuals that you can imagine. Whenever I talk about scams, people usually laugh and chuckle and say, I don't know how people fall for that. But I'm telling you, intelligent, educated people who are hardworking people that held good jobs and are good family people lose large amounts of money. We've had numerous victims over the years lose over 100,000. We lose victims that lose, in the lower numbers in the several hundreds to a couple thousand pretty routinely. So, we want you to understand that these people practice all day long on how to get convincing, how to sound convincing, and how to get you to give up your money. So one of the first things I want to talk about, since I'm a law enforcement officer, is a pretty popular scam called, it's not really called this, but it's pay or be arrested. So you can receive a call, a scammer will call a local resident, and they'll claim to be local law enforcement or a federal agent, like an IRS agent or any type of an agent, and convince the person that they have an active warrant. Usually they'll try to convince you that the active warrant is for not showing up for court. They may even tell you that you had a traffic ticket, something that's convincing to you that could possibly have happened, that you got a red light ticket in a city and you didn't show up for court or pay, so they've issued a warrant for you. Something that's believable to you. Now, you may know you didn't complete any big crime, but as you start to think back, you think that it is possible, in fact, that you could have violated minor traffic law and somehow didn't get notice and failed to appear in court. And they're so convincing of it. So they will demand you to make payment over the phone. Oftentimes, they will want you to use some sort of credit card or gift cards. It's been everything from iTunes cards to Target cards to anything. And the reason that they want you to use these cards is because they have an activation code on them and they can use them. Many of these scams are done from all kinds of places around the world and not necessarily in the United States. And these cards are pretty anonymous. And once they have the activation codes, they take the money and it's gone. And one of the things that has become really popular over the last few years is to spoof the caller ID of your telephone. So we have had a few incidences here, right here at the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office, where people have received calls and they've identified themselves as one of our employees. They'll have a correct name. We had a patrol sergeant several years ago. They used his name and the caller ID said Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office and had the correct phone number. But you have to understand that it's very easy with phone applications, the apps that you get on your smartphone, to spoof an ID, and they can make anything they want show up. They can make it say the White House. They can make it say the Internal Revenue Service. You have to understand that you can't trust your caller ID anymore. It's just something that's easily defeatable by these scammers. So one of the things that you understand is that whatever, they do not call you and demand money over the phone. It does not matter if you have 50 warrants, and you don't have to worry at all about us calling and demanding money like that. Typically, if there's a warrant for you, we're going to come and try to arrest you. But we're not going to take care of the warrant. We may, however, tell you that you can contact the court directly to take care of something, but we're not going to ask you to pay over the phone. So no matter how convincing they sound, no matter how many times that they come up with a story, and you got to understand that they may have a piece of identity, depending on what type of identity was stolen, that tells them something about your past. It may tell them, in fact, that you traveled somewhere. For example, if they got into your credit card information, it may show that you had expenditures in another state. So therefore, that might make the story more convincing. If you were in Kentucky and they said, when you were in Kentucky last month, you ran a stoplight, that sounds really convincing. But I'm telling you that even if you were in Kentucky and possibly ran a stoplight, nobody's going to demand money from you over the telephone. So try to keep that in mind and always be suspicious of somebody trying to do that. So here's another one that takes very little information, and this is often done right over social media. This is a grandparent or relative scam, and it's a very popular one. And they typically will target older people with this one. They can get on your social media, see that you're a grandparent, see that you've posted a proud picture of maybe a grandchild or something like that. They'll look for grandchildren that are old enough to drive on their own. And that typically puts the grandparents a little older. And then they'll call. A lot of people have their telephone number listed on social media. We never recommend that. We never have recommend that people put their telephone number with their Facebook or any other type of social media so that people that don't know you can find your number. And then they'll call you, and they'll call you at really odd hours. They may call you very early in the morning, very late at night, and they'll try to convince you that your loved one has been arrested for something. Um, and then they'll hand the phone off to someone who will try to sound like your grandchild, your grandson, your granddaughter. Now, oftentimes they'll make these phone conversations. They'll be a little bit broken up. They'll be a little bit distorted. I can think of one call right now where it was supposedly coming from a very northern region of Canada, and people believed their grandson had gone up to Canada and he'd gotten arrested and they needed some bail money, and they immediately forked over some credit card numbers and things like that to help their grandson get out to get out of jail. So, things to look for is, get the number, the name of the agency, and then reach out to your grandchild or your loved one, whoever it be, directly and find out if they're in jail. Not too long ago, we had an employee that worked here in the Tuscarawas County Jail, and his grandfather received one of these calls and had them convinced that he needed $8,000 in bail and that they were supposed to give it to him over the phone. Well, the grandfather believed the scam completely, even though he knew his son worked at the jail. But instead of giving it over the phone, he actually drove into our lobby with $8,000 cash attempting to pay. And we brought him in and convinced him that it wasn't true. So really the only thing that saved him was that instead of paying over the phone or over the computer, he decided to drive the money in himself. And his grandson was actually able to meet with him. His grandson was on duty at the time. So, you have to think about that stuff. You get woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you might be caught off guard, you might be alarmed. And if the person's crying on the other end, you think about how people sound when they cry. If they're really emotional, it may not really sound like your grandchild or your loved one, but part of that is because you think you chalk it off that they're overly emotional because they're supposedly in jail in some faraway location. So, keep those things in mind. And once again, the caller ID, I can't stress this enough. I'll stress this several times throughout the night, is your caller ID on your telephone cannot be trusted. So that's what we call a grandparent or relative scam. Online shopping scams. So this one happens probably most prevalently through emails. You get all these spam emails. You may get an email that from a major retailer like Target or Walmart or somebody, and you click on the link because they may have an item that's somewhat interesting to you. You open the link and you see a good price and you go ahead and you move forward with buying it. But what you didn't notice was that the logo may not have been exact, or that the website was not exact, and that there may have been misspelled digits in there because they keep similar, and just hope that you don't take the time to read it. And I'll be honest with you, a number of people do not. So if you see something that you want on Target or Walmart or any other site, we suggest you close the email, go to a browser and bring up Walmart or Target yourself directly, and then look up the item and purchase that way if you want to purchase. These scam emails set up so that you can enter your credit card information right into a form. And once they have that, they can do all kinds of shopping with it. So, we want you to look closely at the logo and closely at the addresses. And then we also want you to look for secure sites. So when you look at the top of a web address, oftentimes they'll start with HTTP. And I've kind of got that here. But we want you to look for this S, this HTTPS. That S stands for secure. That's just a higher security website. And that's something you can look for to help protect yourself a little bit. So be cautious about buying directly from Facebook ads and emails and things like that, because they could easily misdirect you to a fake store site. Overpayment scams is another one here where you are the seller. And a lot of people think that they're safe when they are the seller themselves, that there's not a lot of reason to be concerned. And it doesn't matter what type of information that you're selling or item that you're selling. a recent case that we had was an individual selling a dirt bike, and it was to go to another state. And the individual, made contact with them. They messaged back and forth. They agreed on a price, and they told them they were going to send them a check. So they sent them a check, and I can't remember the exact amount of the item, but let's say it was $1,000. They sent them a check for, say, $3,000 or $4,000, which sounds ridiculous, but they come up then with a very good story about them needing the dirt bike shipped, maybe taken by freight. And they will tell you, listen, go ahead, cash this $5,000 check, deposit it, make arrangements to send the dirt bike or whatever the item is via shipping, ship it to here, and then pay for the shipping, and then mail me back the rest of the money. Usually they'll say, mail me back the rest of the money. Sometimes they may even tell you to keep some extra money for your trouble. So you get that large $5,000 check, and you take it to the bank and you hand it over to the teller, and the teller cashes it and hands you $5,000. And you think, wow, I thought maybe it would be a scam, but they just cashed it for me. It must be the real deal. So now they go pay for the shipping. They ship the item out, and then they put the other money back and they mail it out. Well, if you fall for this one, you get hit numerous ways. What you have to understand about banking, and banks are very good about stopping people from being victims of this, but we've had a large number of people that were victims, so we wanted to cover it tonight. Banks have a relationship with you. They expect you to do some research into who you're doing business with, because certainly they don't have the time to do the research for every customer that they have to see if something is potentially a scam. So when they cash that check for you, it was out of trust for you and your relationship with the bank. So they gave you that $5,000 based on their relationship with you. However, maybe 8 days later, they come back that check's a fraud. They now take the $5,000 out, but let's say you mailed 1,000 of it back to the individual. You're now out that 1,000, you're out the dirt bike, and you're out any fees the bank charges you for taking the $5,000 back out. So this one adds up very quickly and has allowed a lot of people to lose a good deal of money and some valuable, material to them. So this is one where, you're better off to deal somewhat locally. One of the things you can do is you could cash a check and let it sit in your bank long enough to make sure that your bank clears it. If it sat there for 2 weeks and you did nothing with it, and then the bank finally tells you, yes, it really did clear, then it would be safe to go ahead with that. But what typically happens is people cash it, they get the money, they get excited, they go ahead and finish the transaction, send their material and the extra money out, and they're out 3 ways. So overpayment scam is one that is common to us every year. And keep in mind that what makes it worse, or what makes it work, is the conversation, whether it's via messaging or email, or most usually there's some conversation in person, and they will convince you as to why they need to have this dirt bike and why it's so important to them to have it shipped there, that maybe someone in their family had one exactly like it. It meant a lot. Remember, they're effective because they are so convincing. They should be paid actors. That's what they should be pursuing, but instead they pursue a life of crime. One that a lot of us people who did not grow up with fall for, because we're often receive some sort of a message from a caller or an email or some sort of how to hack things more sophisticated, in a more sophisticated way, where we'll get a message that's saying that they've detected some sort of problem with our computer, and they will direct us to an agency, or say that they're an agency that's fictional. They'll call themselves US Cybersecurity, and then they will attempt you to get your passwords so that they can help you. They can log in remotely and help you fix your virus. Oftentimes they have the technology to be able to freeze your computer and make you think that you really do have a virus. And then people are very frustrated. They're frozen. They're in the middle of some important work, and they've got to get their computer fixed, and just all the stress comes together at once, along with the convincing story from this individual, and they hand over a password. Now with their password, they have access to any previous purchase you made, credit card information, histories, data that you save on your computer. And that's like the treasure, for them. They just get all kinds of information that is going to be useful to them for many, many scams. They can reach into all your contacts and reach out to them. They can send emails to your friends, making it look like they're coming from you, and possibly victimize your contacts who may fall for the scam thinking they're hearing from you, things like that. So, one of the things that we tell people all along is, and it's hard here in Tuscarawas County because Tuscarawas County is filled with really good people. We're filled with, a community that's mostly agricultural, and we're filled with a community that likes to help one another. I mean, every time you see that there's a family down with a fire or someone sick, the community comes together, raises a bunch of money. Well, those are the kind of people that unfortunately get taken for scams the most, because we're givers. We're not suspicious. We want to spend our lives helping people. That's what separates us from some of the many big communities that none of us choose to live in, is because we want to live a simpler life. We want to help our neighbor. But just understand that by having that mindset, it makes you a little bit more susceptible to being a victim. So be suspicious when you hear from this stuff. Ignore their help and contact a local computer expert. There's lots of them around here that you can find, and start with one of them. And it may cost you a little bit, but I think you'll save yourself a lot of money and grief in the end. So we're coming up on tax season, and every year, this is a big one for us. So people will get contacted. People shudder when they hear the IRS, or they hear audit, or things like that. I know a man I've known for more than 30 years that lives in the city of Dover, who's a intelligent man, but he went on vacation. He's retired. He went on vacation for 2 months. And when he came back, they hit him just as he got back. And a guy on the telephone made him absolutely convinced that he had underpaid his taxes, and he was going to be, arrested if he didn't pay it right away. Now, based on information that he had to pay an immediate $750, which is not that much money for some people, but it's a lot of money for all of us to just give away like that. If we're going to give it away, we want to choose the charity or the person we want to give it to. And this individual acted in haste, and immediately went and gave them the information on gift cards. And then as soon as he did it, he knew he had done wrong. And when I sat with him and I talked to him, I asked him, I said, what made you do this? You had to know better. And he said, Orvis, I'm just telling you, I've never heard anyone so convincing. I absolutely believed I was on the phone with the IRS. The IRS will not call you about a tax debt. They will send you an official notice by mail. They will never demand that you pay taxes without an opportunity for appeal. It just doesn't work that way. And they require you to use a specific payment method, such as a credit card. They would never do that to you. If you're going to pay your taxes, you would have a right to send a check and mail it into the IRS building, or do it a number of ways through your tax preparer, things like that. So they don't ask for credit card numbers. Nobody does in government. We don't ask for that stuff. We don't demand it. If you have missed a payment, or you missed a jail, or you missed a court appearance and a warrant, typically what happens is someone who looks a lot like me, wearing a uniform a lot like mine, is going to show up at your door, and we're going to personally serve you a document telling you when you have to appear in court. You're going to see some other scams operate that same way, but think about what's normal. Is it normal for someone to demand money over the phone? That's not normal at all, and that is how most scams are done. They make you believe that if you don't act right now, they don't want you thinking about it. It's got to be right now. They want to do it when you're paying, and they don't have to succeed very many times in a row for it to be a good day for them. This is a tough one, because when a big storm comes through and there's a lot of hail damage, and an area gets really littered with hail damage or something from a tornado or whatever happens, want to fix their home so they can protect their belongings, And sometimes, sometimes when that happens, you get all kinds of contractors just driving through, knocking on your door. And so following severe weather, you'll have these people knocking on your door, and they're offering to fix damage. They give you great prices. They want you to turn over their insurance check, oftentimes right on the spot. And they'll even offer to do more work than was damage done, things like that. Again, they sound convincing because they want you to make that decision right then, sign a check over to them, or give them the cash that you got from your check and go from there. Oftentimes, no work will be done and your money's lost. Now, this one I said at the beginning was tough because a lot of legitimate businesses make their way by traveling. I can tell you that in a recent storm, several legitimate companies from Youngstown who normally never come to Tuscarawas County, they came down, they were providing estimates, they were trying to get work, and they were legitimate. So I don't want to say that all these companies knocking on your door are crooks or scammers, but what I want to tell you is why be in such a rush? Why not take their number, a little bit of time to check with the Better Business Bureau, to check their reputation, or better yet, what I do is check with a local contractor, somebody that's going to be easy for you to get a hold of and easy to track down, and go from there. The other thing is, for no type of work should you be paying for all the money at once, even if it's a $10,000 job and the insurance company gave you $10,000 and you know that it's no money out of your pocket. There is absolutely no reason for you to give them all that money at once. You should be paying for a smaller percentage of it, which is typical in contracting, the amount of money needed to get the materials started. And then usually money's released as a project goes on. But that's not what they're going to try to convince you to do. They're going to try to give it over to you, that they'll make your work a priority. They'll sense from talking to you what you are worried about, what your anxiety is, what your stress is, and they'll convince you they can make that right. So, like I said earlier, you just need to be suspicious. You need to beware. And I would always recommend staying right here with local contractors. We have some great contractors here in Tusk and Holmes County that do great work and things like that. And take your time, check up on who you're doing business with, and stay local if you can. This last year, this has been a very frustrating one because at the very beginning, I told you that scams are designed based off of what is hot at the moment and what type of information the scammers can get. So since the start of the pandemic, fraudsters have been bombarding consumers with pitches for everything from phony remedies to COVID-19, test kits, all kinds of things, antibody tests. There's been reports of people going door to door to sign up for antibody tests and different types of test kits and things like that. And it just doesn't operate that way. We've got two great health departments here in Tuscarawas County and a lot of medical clinics, and they do want to get you the services you are. They're setting up clinics, all the time right now, giving COVID-19 vaccines, but they're our local people wearing identifications, setting up in public places, not going door to door. That's just not how government does business. It's not a good way. We want people to be suspicious of those types of services, so we don't perform them ourselves. You should be on the lookout for these signs of vaccine scams. They request you to pay out of pocket to receive a shot or get a vaccine or get on a waiting list. And they'll want you to pay out of pocket even if you have good insurance that would pay it, because they can't bill your insurance. So that has no interest to them. Look for ads for vaccines in websites, social media posts, emails, phone calls, all those kinds of things, are signs that you're not dealing with somebody legitimate. And marketers are offering to sell or ship doses of COVID-19 vaccines. That just doesn't happen. For example, this week alone, law enforcement just got released to receive some vaccines, law enforcement and corrections officers. And we have our own medical staff. We have our own nurses on staff. And for other types of vaccines, the health departments have been able to turn them over to my medical staff, and my medical staff have been able to administer it, but not the COVID-19 vaccine. The COVID COVID-19 vaccine has been such a target of scams that only our health departments will give those vaccines themselves. They're not allowed to, HINAF will not be giving us those vaccines, and we'll be giving it from the directly from the health department. So, those are things. This is a scary time. It scared a lot of people, and fear leads to bad decisions. So another, that one where they tell you they have a warrant, is people who believe that there's been that you're going to get arrested for missing jury duty. Now, I won't be dishonest about that. Missing jury duty is a pretty serious thing. Everybody wants to get out of jury duty. The problem is that's how our entire legal system operates. So the judges can't just simply let everybody out. When you get called, you got to try to serve. They will excuse you if there's a legitimate conflict. But, just because you're friends with a law enforcement officer doesn't mean that you're going to get out of it, because the trial that you may get called for may just simply be a lawsuit, and it may have nothing to do with law enforcement officers. So, the fact that you're connected to law enforcement or to somebody isn't necessarily an automatic reason to get out of jury duty. But what happens is when people miss, you don't normally get requested to come again. What happens is you are then issued a judicial order or a summons to appear before the judge. But we don't call you and say, hey, you missed jury duty, and unless you appear before the judge or send me $1,000 tomorrow, you're going to go to jail. What happens is a deputy sheriff will show up, knock on your door, and they will hand you an order that says you missed jury duty and you are summoned and ordered to appear before Judge whoever at this date and this time at the county courthouse. And you'll appear. At that time, if you don't appear, they may issue a warrant. And if they issue a warrant, the same thing's going to happen. Nobody's going to call you and ask for money. We'll show up at your door and we'll take you in custody for the warrant. So you have to understand that jury duty scam, it operates, just like some of the others, the warrant ones and things like that. They may ask you for other personal information to confirm your identity, to make sure you're talking to the right person by the right name. When you have a name like Orvis, it's a little bit easier because there's not too many imposters around there. But if you have a name like Robin or Sheila or Doris, it's a little more common. They may say, hey, just to make sure we got the right one, can I verify your date of birth, social security number? Don't fall for it. We don't take your social securities anymore. We don't even typically ask for them, things like that. So just be cautious and be suspicious. Let people know that you're not stupid and that you'll contact that court directly. And if you missed, the court will typically give you another chance if you've got a decent excuse. But most of those services are done, in a pretty regular way, and they expect you to answer them. So the biggest one this year, and I can assure you that probably a few of you listening to this call have been a victim of Ohio unemployment fraud. So with COVID-19, what was the biggest thing that came up? All kinds of businesses were closing down, had to shut down the doors, many of them permanently, but a lot more even temporarily, where people had to go on temporary unemployment. So the state made it easier to file for unemployment, and that gave the scammers an opportunity to start filing fraudulent claims. They may have already had some of that pertinent information, like your address and things like that, and they file an unemployment fraud claim. Now, the way that works for most people is they find out, they get an IRS 1099. It shows that they received so many thousands of dollars of unemployment last year, and you're suddenly going to be held liable for it. It's a tax implication for you, and you're worried and you don't know what to do. So we had so many of these that one of the biggest complaints we had is that nobody could get a hold of unemployment. Nobody could do anything. They were filing reports for us, but nobody could get a hold of unemployment. So Ohio set up an unemployment ID theft hotline, and they call and they set up a website on the website for the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. And there's a pretty easy form you can go to, and you fill it out there on that website. Again, don't click on it from an email link. Go to the website yourself so that you can assure that it's a secure website. with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and you could fill that out. The only other thing you'll really need to do at that point is to let whoever your tax preparer is, they have some things that they do on their end with respect to your unemployment fraud, the money that you may be being asked to claim on your taxes. So if you're not really an expert on taxes and normally do it yourself, this is probably a time to get a little help to make sure that you're filing your information the way that the IRS recommends once you've been a victim. So I can tell you that I'm personally handling a couple of these cases right now. The people call me and they're very upset. They're very annoyed. They've worked at the same place for years and they never apply. We start with this hotline here. And I think that at the end of the program, Cheryl's going to email out Come Victims. It's right there at your fingertips. If not, you can call into my office anytime you want, and we'll give you someone to get you that information. Discuss 100 more scenarios that are all the same way. We have people that get scammed for investments. A couple of local farmers got taken for over $100,000 because they believed they were investing in a computer company. The individual kept getting more money from them, believing that some of the items from their investment were held up in United States Customs. They were very convincing. Again, I know this family. These are not stupid people. These are not silly people. These are people that are good, they give, and they trust. And trust makes you weak when it comes to this type of scam. So again, we ask you, be suspicious. Some others have been grants. People who are thinking they're applying for some sort of grant and are asked to pay money up front for fees and different things like that. It starts small. It may start with a smaller amount of money and it just grows. Once they get you on the hook, they convince you that with a little bit more, you'll get this big return. Loans, prizes, lottery and sweepstakes, that kind of stuff. Lottery and sweepstakes scams, of course, there's all kinds of traditional and legitimate lotteries and sweepstakes, but what they convince you is you have to pay a fee or have to pay some portion of the taxes up front. That doesn't make any sense. You don't ever have to pay the taxes up front if you win the lottery. The IRS will get their taxes from you just fine. You better pay them at some point, but nobody's going to require you to pay them up front. So if that is something they're asking for, to pay fees up front to claim the money that you want, that doesn't make any sense at all. So slow down, take a deep breath. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. We all heard that 1,000 times. And just understand that your kindness is your weakness when it comes to being a good person. Ticket scams, when the Indians are doing great and the Cavs are doing great, and even now the Browns are doing great, it makes it really easy to target people for good tickets for a game, people that want to go, and they can set up a fake purchase site. Think about how easy it is to set up an ad on Facebook or to set up a page on Facebook, and people click on a link and they put in their credit card information, and you think you've just bought tickets and you've just given away a lot of money. So, I can't stay here and list all day long the types of scams that there are. I can just tell you that we want you to be suspicious. We want you to never pay for anything up front. Don't pay over the phone. If it's that urgent, I'm going to tell you that it's most likely not legitimate. That's a good rule to go by. If they're trying to press you that you have to pay now, it's urgent, it's right now or never, it's right now or something bad's going to happen, it's probably illegitimate. And you should ignore that and just trust that that's not how we operate. That's not how your government operates. I mean, you may think the government's too big. You may not like some of the things we do, but we're not going to demand your money over the phone. So this is my contact information. I'm going to leave that up here, and you can write down my email or the phone number. And I know that in a couple of days, Cheryl's going to make sure that this recording is up on the Dover Public Library's website so that you can review any portion of it if you want, or if you want to show somebody else. But email me or call me if you have a specific question that pertains to you. I was told to take about 30, 40 minutes. It looks like I'm somewhere around 45 minutes now, so I don't want to go too long. If there's any short questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if you've got something private you want to talk to me about, give me a call or hit me up on this email and I'll get in contact with you and answer any direct questions you have.
Okay, so thank you so very, very much. That was very helpful. I think we can't hear it enough because, of course, we hear it, but we still can fall victim to these So now at this point in time, if somebody has a question, you have to unmute yourself and answer your question, and we'll let Sheriff Campbell answer that question for us if he can.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Cheryl also, and Sheriff Campbell had mentioned about spoofing. And we found out it's probably about 3 years ago that somebody stole our phone number, and we've had it for like 40 years. And I've gotten periodically throughout those years calls from people. Some have been very nasty and, thinking we're legitimately the callers. We don't know what company it is. And I'm concerned that if somebody gets mad because my number is out there, maybe they'll look up on the internet and see where I live that goes with my phone number and come after me, or that they'll think I'm trying to scam them. What can we do, or what should we do when we're spoofed?
Of course, that's a concern. Yeah, of course, that's a concern. One of the other forms that Cheryl will be able to email out is an identity theft basics form. And there are lots of different things you can do. It's very easy nowadays to run a credit check. There's different services. You are entitled to one free credit check every year that you don't ever have to pay for. That's law in all 50 states. And to do that, you can go to annualcreditreport.com, not Free Credit Report. Free Credit Report was actually a pay site. It is a legitimate site, but it is a pay site. Some of the services on there pay, but you can go to annualcreditreport.com once a year, and you can get a credit report from all the credit bureaus and see if there's anything on there. Typically, before somebody's going to come after you, they're going to file some sort of judgment or lien or mechanics lien or anything like that. And there's a lot of ways, things you can pick up from your annual credit report. That's important to do. You need to do that in this day because honestly, when identity theft first began, it began by people stealing your mail out of your mailbox. That still happens, but it's pretty rare. Now you'll hear about one global site that has something like $56 million or 56 million identities stolen at once. They hack into some gigantic site. I don't want to mention names of a bunch of them, but these are giant global sites that collect data for all kinds of reasons. And it's almost impossible to not have your identity stolen at some point. I've had mine stolen 2 or 3 times for sure. I can remember 2 for sure. I haven't actually been victimized yet, but I've been notified that, my data from this organization or that organization has been hacked into and has been stolen. They typically offer you, some free credit reporting for a year or 2 so that you can log on whenever you want. They usually purchase a service for you and you can log on whenever you want and just check your bills. If you've never checked your credit report, it's pretty easy. And it's just going to be looking at the credit cards you actually have and seeing if there's anything additional. If you've never had a Sears credit card and there's one on there, then there's a problem and you need to dispute that right away. Those kind of things. A lot of credit card companies are actually offering that right in their applications now, where you can monitor your credit report, at least a general score, so that if you see there's a big dip, you know that there might be something wrong. If nothing has changed in your financial history, no amount of debt and things like that. So the type of theft that you're talking about can be very complicated and is probably something that only the phone company is going to be able to resolve as far as how that number was done and things like that, and give you the best advice. But with respect to somebody coming after you for something, they're probably, if they're a legitimate company, they're gonna try to file something against you that way. and those judgments get reported to credit bureaus, and that's how you can monitor to see if they're on there. If there's nothing on there, and if you haven't received any mail, you think about even a local company, if they were frauded by someone pretending to be you, I mean, they're going to come knock to your door. They're going to send you a letter. They may file a small claims case. If it's a bigger company, they may just file a judgment and end up being, they usually put out entire firms, those big companies hire entire firms to collect their debt for them because they're too busy to do that. And that'll typically end up on your credit report or by you getting some sort of official notice. So again, there are companies out there that specialize in collecting debt over the phone. GE Capital was one. They're legitimate, but nothing says you have to do anything right on the phone with them. If you don't believe you even had an account that you're behind on, then certainly don't feel pressured by those people, because they're given a script and they're taught to try to get as much money as they can from you right now to reduce the debt and to show some success in their company at recovering debt. So just don't act quickly. I mean, if they've been waiting for your money for a year, it's not going to hurt them to wait a couple more days for you to confirm that it's something that you actually owe, that maybe you made a mistake financially when you were young or something like that. But check your credit reports about the best I can say for that type of incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Yes, I have a question.
Certainly.
So these people that come to your door, how do you get rid of them? I finally put up a no soliciting sign, but I still had people from the some electric thing come and try to get me to give them my bill, and I refused, and they got very upset with me. I used to have these meat guys coming all the time. That's why I got a sign.
Right. Well, you handled it correctly. These people will get upset. Legitimate people typically don't. Because honestly, most used to being rejected more than they're accepted. So if they're showing anger, they're probably not legitimate. They're trying to pressure you to make you feel bad, things like that. My mother was one that she passed away a long time ago, but she had a real difficulty with that. In fact, when she was sick with cancer, she would never answer her phone, and then I would get up and drive across town to check on her, and I'd say, "Why won't you answer your phone?" She says, "All I get is these people want money from me." And she was just too nice to hang up on them. She just simply was raised at a time when it was rude to hang up on people, and she wouldn't do it. And I would say, "Mom, just hang up on them. You don't have to say anything. Just hang up." When my daughter, who's now in her 20s and a teacher, when she was young, when she was like 2, I would just hand the phone to her, and they would get tired of her talking to them for a couple minutes, and they would hang up on their own. But you're right. I mean, you can open the door and you can say, "Sir, I've got to sign here, no solicit. I'm not interested, no matter how great the price or the product," and close the door back on them, or you can just ignore them at your door. If they're the same people persistent, it is certainly a violation of law, and it's something you can call law enforcement on. I don't know where you live, Robin, but we would come to that, and we would try to find out who they are, find out if they have a permit to sell, find out if they're legitimate, and do that for you. I mean, I remember one time that at a house I lived in, a guy knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and he stuck his hand out to shake my hand, and it was automatic that I immediately stuck my hand back out, and then he put a candle in my hand. And as he put a candle in my hand, I didn't quite catch what he thought or what he said, but he said, "For accepting this candle," or "Thank you for accepting a display of a type of sweeper. You get this free gift and a candle." And he turns around and he runs back off. And he goes to a vehicle, and there's other people in the vehicle, and he gets a big giant Kirby sweeper or something. I shouldn't say Kirby because I don't remember. And he comes back up to my door with a sweeper, and it's pouring out rain. And I watched the van drive away. And the van drives away, and they leave him there. That's part of their sales scheme. That's part of their pressure. It's them making you feel bad to say no. Well, that individual, and I felt bad for him because he was a young man, but that individual did not have a warrant, because obviously I could check that. He also didn't have a permit. but he stood in the rain for the next little bit with his sweeper waiting for his ride to come back because he never got in my house. I wasn't interested in a sweeper, and I'm certainly, even if I wasn't going to fall to such a tactic because it's a little bit competitive for me to not be scammed like that, because I've seen so many people lose so much money. So, I think you're handling it right, Robin. I think that the sign is good. I think it's okay to ignore the door, watch them. And if you want to, open the door, but just understand that, when you open a door, that's a possibility that they could shove their way in. So sometimes, you may want to speak to them with the door closed. If you got a window somewhere close by, you can ask them to just go away. If you ask them to go away and they don't immediately, that is a major sign that something's wrong. If you've asked someone to go away and they don't, you should call the police right away, because the legitimate people know they just need to turn and walk away, and somebody who's going to stay there and be persistent after you've told them definitively to leave, that's when the police should definitely be called.
Well, I did call the electric company.
Okay.
And they told me, they said, yes, they said that they were going to go out and do that. And they told them, okay, but they're not supposed to be persistent like that guy was.
Yeah. Yeah. The legitimate companies aren't. And sometimes you get people who are less professional because maybe the company hired a third party to do some duty for them and things like that. You think about all the people we come into contact with who are less than professional, and I'm sure that's what you run into. But whether he was legitimate or illegitimate, by you just refusing to deal with them, that protects you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Anybody else have a question or a comment? Here's your big chance.
Hey, Cheryl.
Yes, Bob.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you and the library for putting this on, and thank Mr. Campbell for giving us this helpful information. I think it's great to have, and I think it should be available to everybody. Hopefully it'll be pushed that people will come and watch things of this. Yeah, I just think that we need to have this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, and I have to give a shout out, Stacy, who zoomed in with us tonight, who works at WJER. She is the one who said to us, she called the library and she said, people are asking all the time about scams and frauds, and could we have a program? And of course, I know that Orvis is very willing to help in any way he can. And so I reached out to him, and of course, right away he said, yes, this would be something that we can do. So yes, I'm very thankful that he agreed to do this, because I do think we can't hear it enough. And we know people who let their guard down. We are kind people here in the Midwest and in the Tuscarawas Valley, but sometimes that works against us because we want to be helpful and we don't want other people to suffer. So then we hear these pleas for help and we kind of give in, and that's exactly what we should not do. We should always be, as the slide said, be suspicious. Take your time. It doesn't have to be done today. If they want it today, it's probably not a good thing, So yes. Anybody else? One last chance. All right. Well, I thank Sheriff Orvis Campbell for coming and giving us this information this evening. It's been great information. And like he said, the recording will be on the website, the Dover Public Library website, probably Thursday or Friday. And also, he sent me some flyers about identity theft, and I have everybody's email. So in these next couple of days, I will send people those flyers. And, now that you can spread the word and help other people know as well. There's nothing that stops you from telling friends, telling relatives, especially elderly people. They need to know that, it's not rude to just hang up on somebody. We can just do that these days. All right. So thank you so much, Sheriff Campbell. We appreciate your help and your dedication to the safety of our Tuscarawas Valley. And thank everybody else for tuning in with us tonight, because it's been a very informative evening. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, bye.